There's really such an incredible amount of blessing that can come out of just treating people right.
It's easy to want to focus on a pain point, but where you feel pain is not always what you're trying to solve.
We have to be proud to put our logo on all of our work. And if we're not, we shouldn't do it.
So if I go do really hard, scary things on the weekend, I come back to this thing and it seems pretty normal. I'm not going to die today doing this job.
Being able to make mistakes, sometimes expensive mistakes, is important. And without the ability to do that, it's hard to learn and to take risks that can be highly beneficial risks.
I feel like we just captured a breaking news moment. How did those sales go? What happens in that situation then? Tell us about it though. What does that mean? Why'd you get into that? How do you use it? There's a fundamental tension in solar that every growing company faces. How do you scale without sacrificing quality? It's tempting to think these are opposing forces. Scale demands speed, standardization, and efficiency. Quality requires attention to detail, customization, and sometimes slower, more deliberate processes. Many companies pick a side, either remaining small and boutique or growing rapidly while cutting corners to hit aggressive targets. The casualties of choosing speed and scale over quality are well documented in our industry. Companies that prioritize speed to money, as one major installer famously promoted on their website, often find themselves dealing with callbacks, angry customers, and ultimately, unsustainable business models. And there's the other path. Some companies have figured out how to grow significantly while actually improving their quality metrics. They've discovered that the right technology, processes, and culture can make scale and quality complementary rather than competing priorities. SunnyMac Solar represents this approach. Operating across Delaware, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, they've grown to over 170 employees while maintaining a 5-star reputation in their markets. What's particularly impressive is how they've eliminated fitment issues, problems that used to affect only 3 to 5% of installations, which honestly is pretty impressive compared to so many others that come across us. And they've reduced fitment issues to 0 now, while simultaneously scaling their operations. The key insight from companies like SunnyMac is that quality at scale isn't about doing the same things cheaper or faster. It's about fundamentally rethinking your processes to leverage technology and data in ways that make precision and efficiency work together. Matt Mark, SunnyMac's vice president, brings a unique perspective to this challenge. Before joining Solar, he spent 13 years as a college baseball coach, a role that taught him how to build systems that help people perform consistently under pressure. When he transitioned to Solar, he brought that same focus on process-driven results and human development. Under his leadership, SunnyMac has become known for their meticulous approach to design accuracy, investment in employee training, and their partnership-focused relationships with sales organizations. They've proven that you can compete on quality rather than just price, even against larger national players. What makes Matt's story particularly interesting is how SunnyMac has used technology strategically, not just adopting tools for their own sake, but implementing solutions that directly support their quality-first philosophy, their partners, and their customers. Their evolution from manual measurements to satellite imagery to drone-based design illustrates how thoughtful tech adoption can enhance rather than replace human expertise. Today, we'll explore with Matt how SunnyMac has built a culture that prioritizes quality while achieving significant scale, and what they've learned about the intersection of technology and operational excellence, and how their approach to partnerships and training creates sustainable competitive advantages. Welcome to When Life Gives You Lumens, Matt. Great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Jason. Excited for this.
So I want to start philosophical before we get into it and get spicy on things, right? What does quality mean for you and your business?
It is quality to me is finding a way to not make sacrifices, but knowing the end goal. A lot of times, you focus so much on the outcomes, and if your process is much more scrutinized, then your outcome takes care of itself. If you can combine that with the people in the process, the outcome, which to me should be quality, is the perfect equation right there.
And is there a quantification of quality, or hey, we have a perfect install that matched the point of sale? Like, if you can go a little deeper on what quality looks like for your organization.
Yeah. So quality to me does have a couple different facets to it. Obviously, there is the operational and economic side of it, that we want to make sure that we can minimize truck rolls, that we can execute on what we promised we would deliver. That's that quality side of it. And then everything that lives beyond that, from the process with the people, just how you can dive into what you're training them on, what your level of expectation of execution is. So, couple those all together, that's really where the quality lives for me. If it did have a statistical category to it, I would say much more lives in, and for us, thankfully it is a service industry. It is number of days. It's number of days to install, and it's number of days to be paid for financial providers. If we don't do a good job and execute on what we said we would do, we're not getting paid. And if we're not, executing on the front end, on permit, on submittals, on engineering, those types of things, then we're just going to extend our days and lose our customers. So statistically, it breaks down on number of days.
From the Scanify perspective, we often think about what was sold in terms of number of panels, fitment, layout, formation, production, shading is what occurs on install day, and also is what continues to occur after the project is energized. What's interesting, though, is how your competitors also think about it. It might be different. We heard a story recently around 3 companies in a state in the Southeast, and 2 of them were pushing max fills on bad satellite imagery. And being the quality accurate group might not have the same production numbers. They might be less. They might not have the same number of panels or the same number of offset. And so how do you compete in that environment where some groups are just pushing what could pencil for TPO, when what what you have is correct and what they have isn't?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I look at it as like, it all comes down into pricing. Pricing from how much is a sales team expecting to make, how much is a customer expecting to pay. Prices fade, reputation lasts. So if you are focusing on that, then your reputation will last. It will. You have the barrier that is 25D and tax credit ending at the end of this year for cash and loan. There's speed into that. People want to put systems on the roof, and sometimes they're gonna make choices that might compromise their reputation because they want to make money at the end of the day. For us, I look at it as I want to hold on to the paper for 25 years, and each customer starts a new cycle every day, every hour, whenever we sell a job. So as long as I don't get away from that idea that it is holding on to that job and our reputation for that 25 years, then I think I'll be in a good spot. Obviously, I want to always install more and not just use that tax credits are going away. But at the same time, I don't want to sacrifice the fact that I want to be around. I don't want to be gone because we overpromised a customer and then our reviews and our customer testimonials go down. Like, what is that? I'm not in it for a short-term gain. It's a long haul. It's a marathon, not a sprint for us.
I notice in your signature, it states how many years you guys have been in business. That's something that I picked up on recently. I don't know if it's always been that in your signature, but that's something that, what was it, 14 years, 16 years, or something like that, which is an eternity in solar.
16 years now. Yeah. We're dinosaurs compared to some.
Yeah.
Obviously have had many ups and downs along that way, and different areas of cycles from subcontracting to turnkey to, our current model now. But yeah, and that all goes to our owner, Matt McFadden. He's heavily involved in everything that we do, but it's his name that's been there that long.
Yeah. I'm really worried that there are going to be a lot of poorly installed systems the next 5 months. It's August 15th when we're recording this. I don't know when we're going to release it, but there's going to be a massive rush to get systems in. I heard today of a call where there's not enough domestic content. This is not going to be a you problem. You guys are going to do great. I've known you for years, but I think there's going to be a lot of installers that are just doing anything they can to get systems on the roof and get them to pencil. I don't know if you're hearing something similar.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a contraction of domestic goods. I think that it reminds me a lot of the COVID time. And I'm sure we'll get into it. I mean, but that's really where your strength was shown to us, because you're going to have panels that are going to change. You're going to have systems that are going to change from an AHJ standpoint, from a fitability standpoint. And that's where kind of your product helped separate us. And I think it's going to get into that again if that contraction of equipment really does exist, as many are saying it does. But to your point, yeah, I mean, they want to put systems up on a roof. It's a blessing and a curse to do a lot of business in our areas, that you're looking at 40, 50-day install times. You've got a lot of time to get it right. You got a lot of time to make sure your customer understands, what they're buying, what is essentially going on in their home, and what should be produced. I always wonder if it would be so much tougher to like stay away from fraud and stay away from overpromising in those states that can turn in like 5 days. Those 5-10 days. I mean, it's probably awesome for cash flow, but at the end of the day, like, it also is awesome for fraud, and just what is going to happen. So those sacrifices are really going to, like you said, I think they're really going to show their ugly head here pretty quickly.
Yeah, they're also awesome for clawbacks, right?
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah. Unless they just go away, and close their doors. It's a tough thing with our industry, and that's why for us, it's a reputation, man. I got to be around and got to do a good job every day, and not just tomorrow is going to be the last day.
Yep. Let's talk about the sales teams you work with, because your culture can permeate within the immediate group that you guys oversee, your direct employee base, but they're an extension of what you do. How do you infuse this degree of culture and philosophy and emphasis on quality through them and your collaboration with them?
Yeah. I mean, look, we are collaborative with them. I view the sales teams that work for us as our partners. I think I have given more no's than yeses to outside sales teams, because I like to say that I'm collaborative but firm. At the end of the day, they are representing us. They are representing our financiers, the products that we sell, but they are our customers. It will be SunnyMac customers. It isn't Solar XYZ that's selling it. So I scrutinize our sales teams pretty hard. I also like to think I look at it from their lens on what do they need to be better, to be faster, to be more accurate. If I can focus on what tools I'm providing to them so that all those boxes are checked, then I can be collaborative and firm, and I'm going to pay you too, which sadly is a separator for some in our industry. But I want to make sure that they, they have families to take care of. I want them to make sure there's food on the table. But I also, the end goal, it's a customer journey. It isn't a sales journey. It isn't an EPC journey. It's the customer's journey. So we want to think about that end goal and take care of those processes throughout it.
Well, I appreciate you emphasizing the homeowner, and also earlier you talked about this as a services project. We've seen some recent announcements by other solar softwares talking about eliminating site surveys and all this stuff, and why are we minimizing the challenge and the effort of our industry? We're Silicon Valleyizing this. This is not a tech project. This is a construction project. In fact, it could be the third most expensive asset you own after your house and your car.
Absolutely.
So the aspect that technology vendors, of which Scanify is one, try to minimize the challenge that this is and cut corners. We we look at our peers and we're like, why are you doing that? That's not, one group was obsessed with, can you eliminate the site survey? Could you have the same rules in every jurisdiction nationwide? It's like, can you name another construction project where that is the talk track? Like, imagine virtually sold kitchens or bathrooms, with no site surveying and uniform permitting rules. Like, it's your home. It's an expensive asset, and it's I find that our industry sometimes looks for the shiny technology, not the rational one. And I hope that this transition that we're about to go through as an industry with the tax credit goes away, that quality will rise to the surface. And those groups that emphasize those things will, the groups that emphasize the tech forward approach will go away. And the ones that emphasize it's a services experience, it's a construction project, it's not a 5-day to install, it's a 10, 20, 30-day process that involves a lot of conversation. I hope that returns to our industry.
Yeah, I mean, so much like I said, with the states that we operate in being a blessing and a curse, kind of spreading it out in days, technology is a blessing and a curse as well. I'm guilty of staring at my phone and sometimes it's quicker for me to text than pick up a call. Like I think we have gotten away from the human element. I see the numbers on what, closed percentages are, what completed projects are in person versus virtual. So I understand, like, people do have that crutch of like, okay, like, if you don't have to enter my home, I can do this at 2 a.m. I mean, look, that's the information I provide to my sales team. And that's my argument. It's like, look, I'll give you guys a bunch of information because I know you're going to look at it at 1 a.m. And I don't want to answer my phone or a text at 1 a.m. because you have a question. I want to give you the information, you can figure it out, and make a conscious decision on what is next. But I think we've also fallen into that habit, but there's always going to be the need for, like you said, of going in and looking at your kitchen, of executing on that portion of it. It is sports analogies I'm full of, but it reminds me a lot of the Moneyball era, that they were so driven on statistical analysis. And yes, it does play a part, but you got rid of some old scouts and those old scouts found some really good baseball players. It's a blend. It has to be a blend. It's AI. The new technologies are out there. You got to blend them. I think we'll always have that play in it. But to me, the bells and whistles are great, but at the end of the day, you got to install it. Like it's manual labor, So, and our best follow through is when it starts with a human to human interaction, and it ends that way.
I could not agree more, and we'll talk more about the tech in a second. But I want to double down on what you just said. Is that this is a human experience. You buy a house from a human. You buy a car from a human. You buy any contracting work. It's a human, right? It's not buy it online or have AI design it for you and it's going to fit. It's just that's not. I don't know if it will ever be there. AI won't be able to tell you the status of your electrical wires in your wall or the structural integrity of your roof. Or, hey, maybe you actually need higher than 80% offset because you're going to buy an electric vehicle. Oh, but which one are you going to buy? And again, I think a lot of software companies are playing that up and a lot of solar contractors are getting all excited. And at the end of the day, it's just crap solar going in. And
yeah.
It's very frustrating.
They get away from what it is. I mean, it is, look, I don't care if it's $1. It's an expense that the customer did not have to pay. Yes, I want to save them money. I mean, honestly, if they get it for $1, they'd be super thrilled. But I respect that the value is there. And I want all of our team members to understand that. Like, I respect, no matter if it's a small system, big system, it is an investment into us. They're trusting us to come in their home multiple times. I mean, for us, we're in home from the sales experience to the site survey to the install. It could be the roof before that install to the inspection. Like, it is a human element throughout all of it. I've said it to you guys before, like, big Woody Hayes fan, like, you win with people. And I want my people at that customer's house as many times as possible within like reasonable bounds, within fiscally responsible bounds, but I want them to know that I respect their projects. And by that, I'm going to put my people in there. I'm not going to sub it out. I'm not going to bring people in and cut corners. Like, it's my people that are going to execute on that project.
Yeah, that's why you guys are separated versus a lot of others. I want to talk about TPO because we have seen an interesting dialogue play out, which is for Scanifly in particular, people sizing jobs to the M1, what was sold, versus to what's accurate, right? In the era of TPO, when you're committed to a price per watt, and even if you know it's more accurate, it doesn't really matter because you're just trying to hit that production that you told the homeowner. I wanted to hear your take on that outcome on the market, just trying to match sun hours at install to to what was sold, and what are your thoughts on that? Where's that going to go next year? How do we take this as an industry where we can actually value accuracy and quality versus just, hey, let's just fit the financial box that TPO wants us to fit in so we can churn more, do more projects. What's your take on all that?
I mean, I like the production based like TPO. Like, I love it. It allows us to be better than what we sold a customer. A positive change order, or negative if they're paying less, a positive change order to me is like the greatest change order I can ever ask a sales team to sign or a customer to sign. So if I'm emphasizing on production and I see that, instead of 24 panels, it's 23 panels, and I can make it look a little cleaner or a little more symmetrical, like, to me, that's a win. The sales teams might disagree with me. They like the 24 panels. 24 panels is, an extra 435 watts, in our example. But I'm like, no, I can actually cut down in penetrations. I can cut down on install time. I can cut down on load on the roof. I can cut down a lot of things. I can make it look better for them, and I can produce the same, if not more. I don't want to make a sacrifice and produce less with those panels. If I can make the design better with Scanifly, I'm going to do it. I'm going to absolutely do it every time because of what it can do. Now, at the end of the day, this is the TPO world that we live in. They're the gatekeepers of all the rules. The financiers are saying it is production based at that point. So if that happens, they're okay with it because it is that number. It's that black pizza box that says it's got to produce 20,000 kilowatt hours. Make it however you want. But to me, it's the expectation to the customer that I'm explaining to them that, yes, you had that, but I actually made it better. I made it better with less risk to you. And your product allowed me to see if I could actually make it work, to see if my solar availability is good or better than I thought it was. I'm okay with being conservative up front. I want to be accurate on the back, though.
But what I've heard is that when you file your M1 at the point of close, which is typically on satellite imagery, that's the production number you're expected to hit. And everything after that is a change order, right? So it sounds like you guys are communicating effectively to the homeowner, but there are a lot of groups that don't want any change orders because it creates friction, even if they know it's a more accurate outcome on the back end. Why are you comfortable with that and they're not?
Yeah, and I think it goes into training them in the front end, of educating them on that journey. I think some people are, our industry has no barrier to entry, ability to make good money from a sales perspective, and I think there are people out there that would rather sell it fast. And then they think every time they go back to a customer, it's a concern, that it's bad news, or they're going to rethink their deal. Look, if I've captured their journey throughout it and communicated with them, both from stuff they can absorb on their own time and speed, versus as well as us supplementing that with the human interaction, I don't see it as a negative. But I do understand that the industry, not for the most part, but there are pockets that they're concerned. They're concerned they're going to lose their deal, and they're going to put anything they can out there. And that's not the solution. That is that short-term game. That's a short-term mindset that they're in. And I think hopefully it's going to go away. Like the day of reckoning will come. I don't know when, but it will. they're going to want to be justified.
I hope so. I was in a meeting recently where someone said, the sales team revolted because we're more accurate, but it means they're making less money. They used a software before that showed higher production intentionally. It's like, how do you win in that situation?
Yeah.
How do you uphold accuracy then?
I've seen some of those magical panels and systems, be sold over ours. And it's tough. It's a dog eat dog world whenever you see that. Look, in that scenario, like that knows okay, and you got to explain your case and show, that your reputation's been there, show that your execution has been there, your customer testimonials have been there. Like sometimes I can't win them all, man. I can't win them all. That's why kind of our process 2 years ago really changed to an educational standpoint, like mindset. One of Matt's core values that we follow is a continual learner. If I can make our customer a continual learner too, then I've done all I can do. Sometimes people buy because they like the salesman more, and sometimes the facts don't make sense. It is what it is. I hate to see it, but every industry has that. The greatest, thing that we fight is that there is scrutinization of our industry, and that doesn't help its cause. So that's those EPCs, that's those installers, that's those sales teams that look for that short-term gain, and hopefully it does resolve itself, or that there's enough good ones of us there that we kind of phase them out. That's my goal. I want to phase them out.
I want to think about it from the lens of the TPO companies, because this is the other part that I don't understand. Why don't they incentivize accuracy more? Because ultimately when they sell it, if they securitize it or they raise the next fund, they're getting a ding on pricing. Are they not looking at all of the systems they approved because LiDAR was what it was, right? Versus an on-site analysis? Like, why are they not caring more about incentivizing a contractor to true it up?
Yeah. Well, I think right now our industry has some new blood in it. I don't know if they necessarily have the data. And look, they always trust their own data first. The good leaps, the light reaches, those types of, they've only been around really for TPO for, let's call it 2 years, just for conversation's sake. Sunrun obviously is kind of the longer one that can go in it. And you know what they're doing? They've been there for the longest, but they're adding the human element into it. They're installing their own projects. They've incorporated both the technology side and the human side of it. And I think that's why they've been around such a long time. I'm not saying the other ones don't. I think the other ones now, I think every TPO is scrutinizing installers more and more. Even on the front end, the recruiting process, kind of what they have to go through to be a partner or to receive their funds. I think they're doing their due diligence on the front end. I think that obviously they have to lean on satellite right now, and that's the true up is satellite, so for me, it still blends both of them together. It is the satellite, to start the process. And for me, it's the drone to make it real.
Yeah. I also wonder if they don't know. Like, I've spoken with individuals at a lot of these financing companies, and the design and QA and ops people come from one background, and they actually get it. There's one design leader at one of the TPOs. I don't want to name names. He worked with us before joining the TPO, and we helped them go from a 90% revision rate down to a 10% one. So he gets it. He understands what on-site data means versus remote data. But a lot of the people who are on the business development side, the executive team, they're former salespeople. And so they come from the same ethos. And a lot of them don't understand even the difference between LiDAR and on-site data. If you ask them what a sometric sun eye is, they don't know. And I think to your point, maybe to be fair to them, like, they probably only have 2 to 3 years of actual production data to analyze. And are they really analyzing those results when you've got an Aurora out there who's been lying to everyone that LiDAR is accurate when we all know it's from 2017, And so I'm wondering when that reckoning is going to come. When they're going to realize, I'm just broadening across all TPOs, when they're going to say, whoa, we're on the bag for this production. And an even 5% delta in actuality, because that tree grew 20 feet over a few years of the LiDAR scan, that is a massive financial swing for our business. And I'm waiting for that moment to occur, because what I've seen recently, and I think what's going to start next year, and you said it, the industry will go based on TPO. That will be the bulk of how glass is put on the roof and the standards that are set. And if TPO chooses to raise their standards, that's how solar wins, right? I actually think there's going to be a massive undersupply of TPO next year. There will be not enough capital to go around. The big groups will get access to it. The small groups will be closed out. They'll either have to aggregate or they'll have to fend for themselves with cash situations or some type of loan hybrids. But the bulk of the financing, definitely the bulk, right? I think Ohm says 70%, but the bulk of even glass on the roof will be TPO. And if we as an industry want to raise our standards, all you need is TPO to change a couple of rules and it will work. And they will now have the leverage because everyone needs TPO capital because there isn't enough. And a lot of them are safe harboring for their contractors they work with. So they have double the leverage. So now is that moment when TPO can finally say as an industry to solar, grow up. It's time. And I really hope that moment occurs, but I'm not that confident yet, unfortunately.
No, but once they're in that, I mean, look, much like you, they're going to be in the driver's seat. And the minute they, right now they are, like you said, they did either come from salespeople or they came from loan industries, those types of things. Like it's an evolution. It's going to be something that when they have all that power and their financiers say something needs to change, look, we're going to have to change with it. I think it's going to be like you said. I think it will be a scrutinization of what is being executed. I have seen the scrutinization from the back end on closeouts, be firm, and I'm totally fine with it. Like I'm okay with a stringent closeout process to make sure it is executable to the customer, because in 2 years when their sample size grows or the true up period comes, like, man, I'm on the hook for it. I get it. I just don't know. Like I said before, I don't know if their sample size is large enough. I think they're doing good things. I think there are more rules in place now than there was 3 years ago when we were selling, TPO 2 years ago when that transition really started. But I think that scrutinization will increase. It definitely will. I mean, the financiers, where the money comes from, they're going to have rules in place because there is an overshadowing of what's going on in our industry. Like if people think it's bad, no matter what political party you're from, like they've read something that we're out to take care of everyone and take all their money, and it's not the case.
All right, so I want to pivot to talking about you a little bit, right? You have a pretty extensive baseball career, right? So I'd love to start out with, tell us about it, what your position, your style. I believe you were a manager for a bit. Tell us about that, and then we'll get into solar.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a illustrious career as a player.
Don't undersell yourself. Let's hear it.
100%. I'm being truthful. Those that can't do, coach, was the model that I followed. I was lucky enough to play on some really good teams. I was lucky enough to come in, and it's kind of helped me along the way to come into teams that were really bad and then turned it around and now are nationally recognized teams.
Give it like who? Give us some examples.
So my alma mater, Washington Jefferson, freshman year, 6-26, new coach. It was like, all right, it was a football school, really good football, top 25 nationally every year, and then now perennially been to the College World Series twice now, same coach, turned it around. I learned a lot from him. I learned a lot on what process looked like. I learned a lot on what expectations were. I keep goals a lot internal. I learned a lot from him. He was not a emotional person. He wasn't going to rah speech you, but he'd talk to you. He was like the greatest psychologist to me because he could be firm with one and coddle the next. And I think there's great strength in that. I think there's a lot in what I do that I learned from him, but not to digress too far. And then I took over, when I got into coaching, I was lucky enough to coach some really solid teams that had been to World Series, that had quality talent. And then I took a leap of faith and I went to probably the worst program in the country, so bad that they had lost over 200 games in a row.
Which one?
This was Caltech. So the East Coast people will know it as well, but it's the MIT of the West. I for the early part of my career, I probably averaged more denied perfect ACTs and SATs than I did wins. I had a lot. So it was incredibly challenging, but thankfully I got my second game as the head coach there. I broke that streak. So I got to be in Sports Illustrated and Baseball Tonight and everything, and all in Super Bowl weekend. So it was a wild ride coming from someone that lived only in small towns and then moved to big city LA. It was a pretty wild ride, but I loved it. I loved kind of that underdog mentality, and I loved rewriting or reworking what everyone thought the standard was to make it your standard. I loved recruiting. Recruiting was like one of my favorite things to do, of going out and finding people. I'd usually spend 40, 50 days on the road of going all over the country, finding the smartest kids that wanted to play baseball. So because it wasn't just being good at baseball, you had to be incredibly talented in the classroom and have internships or have laboratory experiments. I had multiple kids that have patents, and I'm recruiting them. And you're like, wow, you are so much smarter than me. So my pivot there was to surround myself with as many smart people as I could. I saw their brilliance. I saw their genius at work, and then just how they would think about a process or think about a system, and sometimes over scrutinization of a system, and you're like, okay, like there's a fine line between both of them. So to learn what I thought was a basic approach on, what are goals, what are our processes, and then to see kind of advanced mode, of what is over, diving into something. And now, my unique combination is find that balance. Back to that head coach I talked about. It's the balance between being firm and being soft on another. I do the same thing, and it's helped me here, immensely.
How did you make the transition from baseball to solar?
Well, I first made it because I knew Matt McFadden, the owner of SunnyMac. We had some personal overlapping, we'll call it wives, ex-wives, throughout that journey. So I knew him and got to spend some time with him, and instantly recognized that he was one of those smart guys that I wanted to surround myself with. And to this day, still, I've got people that will potentially be up for Nobel Prizes here in a few years. I have people that are front level for the Dodgers because they're so smart and can figure things out. I've been lucky to be around them, and I put Matt in that same category. So kind of an instant attraction to that. And then just talking about solar, it was something that was so intriguing to me. I knew nothing about, but I learned that I could learn 1% of something every day. And it still remains true. Like, it's such an evolving industry, and such an industry in its infancy, that I feel confident in telling people you can learn 1% every day. My model as a coach was get 1% better every day. I could follow that kind of process, that mindset, and where I exist today. But that's kind of what got me on there, talking about it, excited about it. And then my wife and I both were college coaches. We wanted to move out east, and he wanted to expand. He wanted to get into commercial solar. Again, I knew nothing about it, but he was willing to bank on me. And commercial solar to me was a lot like a recruiting process. It was a 2-year process. It was following up on emails. It was showing some FaceTime. For me, recruiting, it was meeting parents. It was meeting grandparents. It was selling me to them. I didn't have wins to sell them. I had to sell me. So same thing when we started commercial. We didn't have a portfolio per se to show, so I had to sell me. So I did that and enjoyed it for 2-3 years. And then we started kind of exploding into resi. And Matt did it all. Matt was doing installs, helping out sales teams. God bless him. He was doing a bunch. And then he asked for some help, and I was thankfully, I was the person that he asked. So then we changed our model into recruiting outside teams. So we went and both him and I would go and recruit teams and then educate teams, find new softwares for teams, kind of build it from the ground up. So we kind of rewrote ourselves of who we were at that time. And I got to be there, it was during COVID. So everyone was working from home, and thankfully we were considered essential, and I like coming to the office. So man, I spent a lot of time together and figured out technologies that we wanted and sales teams that we wanted to bring on.
I've played baseball my whole life. Our softball team just made it to the championship of our local league. I'm very proud. But it's a bunch of like a grown Jewish guys playing together. It's not a very competitive league in the grand scheme of things, but being honest. But what was that?
Said you're out there. That's what matters.
I had a grand slam this season. I was pretty proud of that,
Was it inside the park?
There are no fences. It's just the field. It just goes. But I hit it over the outfielder's head. Okay. And my son was there to watch. Oh, it doesn't get better than that. Anyways, I was aware of your baseball background, but I only played baseball through high school, and it wasn't, illustrious. So I always forget the recruitment side. And I never pieced together until you just brought it up how much, everyone talks about sports and business have a lot of parallels, whether it's work ethic or commitment or discipline and all those, things that you put on a wall with values. But the parallels that you just outlined about I'm going to repeat it back. Like, you had to recruit athletes with no track record of wins at Caltech. You were selling them on a vision and right? That's a people to people. That's a services. Going back to what we talked about earlier, right? You had to start commercial solar. They had no track record. You had to recruit. You had to engage. You had to sell people to get on board with what you were doing. That's people to people. That's you. And then recruiting sales orgs and getting them to buy into your culture and where you're taking this as a vision. So the parallel is, the narrative, the weave through all of it is very consistent.
Yeah.
And very impressive.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I mean, it is, look, when I got out of coaching, I didn't have transferable skills. Like, coaching, if you're not going to coach, you put it on your resume and they're like, that's cool. Like, I like baseball, I'd love to coach that too. And you're like, well, I did more than that. Like, I had budgets, I had to do a lot more. It wasn't
just stand there in tights and stand on the field doing weird signals at people.
There was more into it. I thankfully got to teach at, one of the top 5 universities in the world. Like, I got that, but they were like, well, what really does a coach bring? And you're like, okay. But Matt believed in it. Matt believed that there were parallels. It was, to me, sales was parallel to it. Thankfully, I've progressed. I think I was like an average salesperson, much like a player. Like, I was an average player. I think I'm better when I progress into that next model of professionalism, whether it be coaching or management.
Yep. I like to say with the basketball analogy, right? Michael Jordan was an awful coach. It's what makes Steve Kerr or Phil Jackson actually really good coaches, because they were the mediocre guys sitting on the bench taking it all in. They were willing to take that shot, and they could play in the spotlight, so they can empathize with the star player, but they also know what it's like to be the last man on the bench, and that's typically your best leader in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I got lucky, man. I came in at the right time. Like, Matt let me go on roofs and help build commercial systems and got to understand it. And obviously I spent a lot of time with vendors and, but at the end of the day, like, I did start as a salesperson. Like, so I like to think that I can blend the two. I'm not a, certified electrician or anything. I can get around, but I was there, like, and this is not to digress from anyone that is doing the labor. Like, I love our labor guys. There's so much respect for them, whether it be hot, cold, indifferent, putting up with customers, showing up to a new project every day. There's so much respect for what they do. So I try to apply that respect to the sales guys so they understand it. Like, there's nothing more irritating to me when a person is saying, hey, this site survey is a few minutes late. You're like, well, they were just in an attic that was 140 degrees. Like, let's be human on this. Let's think about, like, what they went through, and they're going to be there. They told your customer they're running late. Like, we're going to be there. We're going to execute on what we promised to them. but like, let's not forget like what they just sacrificed to get a job done, and make sure they do it safely. Strict no death policy here at SunnyMac. So
I wish there were more contractors that said that. I can't tell you how many calls I've been on since doing this at Scanify where people just snicker about safety. Oh yeah, when it's lightning out, they still go on the roof and get hand measurements. No problem. It's all good. Oh, there was a blizzard. We asked them to climb up on the roof and shovel off 3 feet and then take hand measurements by themselves. 3rd story. It's like, what? Don't people have families to go back to?
yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time kind of defending both sides. Like, I get it. Like, and I want the sales guys to understand it. I also want the installers that are like showing up and like, hey, or site survey goes out and say, hey, this just need a roof, and everyone here gets mad. Why didn't they call it a roof? I said, look, they were probably selling it at 9:00 at night. They could have been with their family. It was dark. Again, let's be human. Like, let's talk about this. Like, can I educate them on, hey, maybe take a look at something or ask more questions, develop into it. But I try to skirt the lines between both of them and blend the two together. Like, back to I hate saying it, but you're right. Like, back to that human element of it.
Yeah. I just want to do a couple minutes on technology. I know that you guys, started with manual measurements with Aurora. Now you're doing a lot more with drones. Walk us through the evolution of how you came across these different technologies. Obviously, we work together now closely. What was that thought process for you guys as you decided where you wanted to take your tech stack in your process?
Yeah, I mean, it started out obviously with hand measurements, and I can still think of all the site survey things of drawing the roofs and where they go. Setback restrictions were a little looser back then. I mean, each iteration they've gotten a little bit more stricter or smaller, depending on how you look at it. So I don't think it was necessarily always bad. Or not bad, but always as challenging. So when you have a new challenge, you have to ask yourself, is your process worth it? Is your process worth it from a safety standpoint, from an executable standpoint, and from a financial standpoint? And it wasn't. It was like, our site surveys are 3 hours long. They're on that roof and they're scarring it up, or they're putting themselves at risk, like they're by themselves. Am I going to ask them to go up 40 feet on a steep pitch, like without a spot? Like, no, I'm not, so it was like, okay, well, let's look at droning, or let's look at satellite. We honestly, when we went satellite next with the Evil Empire, we, what we did was we still did site surveys. It was at some point, I remember having conversations with you when we were SunPower, and still we wwere using Aurora. But it came a time and point, like, let's start testing it out. I think selfishly, I used it more for commercial to start out because it was a cool show to me. Like, it was technology, and it was me learning that 1%, and then we started going, can we figure out how to do this residentially? So let's start testing out a couple residential places. And it's like, okay, yeah, like we see like what's going on here, like a real test case. Like, okay, well, we're cutting down on labor. We're improving accuracy. And it's like, okay, I've got 2 of my 3 boxes checked here. And then all of a sudden, when we buy into it and do every one of them, I couldn't see myself any other way right now, And then, like I said before, during COVID, whenever supply was in short demand, if I didn't have you and I didn't have your measurements, like I think I would have survived, but I definitely would have been divorced. I definitely would have had people mad at me more often than they are. We had to be flexible, and that's where I think our tech stack of what we have has allowed us to be flexible, and that there's great importance in that, because flexible within reason. I know what my production is. I know what I promised the customer. I've got to be flexible within those constraints, and execute on it. And if I can't, I need to let them know, so your process and what my evolution got, let me tell the customer earlier to make sure I wasn't sacrificing on what they expected.
I've always been impressed with you guys thinking a couple steps ahead of everyone with your tech stack. You're willing to take chances. Your comment of like learn 1% every day, that truly shows with you guys are typically a couple steps ahead with how you and Matt think. Are there any quantifiable results that you have seen either historically or even still today from using our technology? Whether it's reduced time on site or throughput or reducing change orders, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's quantifiable isn't enough justification. Like the number is exponential, on what your process has enabled us to do. And it's been everything you just said. It's cut down on change orders. It has increased our production basis and what we can deliver to a customer. Like I always want to produce more. Like, that's the greatest thing. Like, is to undersell and over deliver. If we can find that way to do it, and within means of the equipment or within means of interconnection, but to do it is kind of like the greatest gift I could give a customer. Of not expecting it but delivering on it. And then lastly is just how much time, again, back to human element, how much time our site surveyors spend out there. I want them back home. I want them back home safe. And at the end of the day, I have all the material to execute on it the next day. I have my drone imagery. Our systems are building it out at that moment. With our other partners that we work with in our industry. And then that morning when we show up, we can start executing on that job that was done a mere hours ago. But everyone spent time with their family. Everyone got to go home. Look, it's a people game, man. I want them to be people.
When I think about the people first, I also emphasize that retaining your good people for a solar contractor is so important. When you find great employees, I mean, in any business, but especially at a solar contractor where it's human to human as the theme of this discussion, but also it's knowledge capital in the business. It's most solar contractors are geographically constrained, right? We're a fully remote business. I can hire anywhere. You got to hire people in a certain geographic radius, right? Typically speaking. And so when you find good people and you can retain them, that's really everything. And I don't know if most business owners think about it the same way versus people just being commodities.
Yeah, I'd like to hire athletes is what I'm going to say, but it's athletes in the business world. I like people that can do a lot of things. Employees I spend the most time with are people that have spent time in design, spent time with salespeople, spent time in other things. They're awesome because they're flexible. Our industry requires flexibility. As much as I think my title is VP, and people always ask me what I do, and I'm like, just depends on the minute or the day or, where I'm at that moment. The flexibility has to be there, and I think it all starts with Matt on that regard. Like, again, he's done it all from A to Z for us, and he still likes to come in and jump whenever there's a problem or the need to be better or the want to be better. He's right there with us. Like he's given his thoughts on it. He's training, he's involved. I think that's what we want to do with all of our people. Yeah. From keeping labor, keeping the same people is important, but you also have to challenge them. Do the same thing mundanely every day. I think there's a burnout. I think there's a loss of love, and you got to like what you do when you come here. So I think if you challenge them with new sequences, new levels of expectation. Now, again, this is in conjunction with what they can do. I'm not crazy out here and saying, hey, I need this number that is not going to be attained. I want feedback. What can you do? Okay, can I challenge you to do more? What do you need to do that? And I think that lets them stay here because there's a level of growth. There's a level of continual learning. Kind of back to what I talked earlier, that continual learning is so important. I think continual learning keeps people engaged longer and for their career. This is a career, not a job.
What do you say to the organizations that emphasize technology on the front end and we'll just figure it out on the back end, right? We just got to sell the job and we'll figure the rest out.
I've been there. I've danced with that devil, I've thought about it. But I go back to that it is our reputation, that it's, again, I think about every project for 25 years. I might not be here. Matt could get rid of me tomorrow or, the good Lord could take me away. But I need to look at it as SunnyMac will be there for that customer for the 25 years. I sincerely think that's the case throughout it. So though I'm tempted by that on that front end of technology and things will take care of it, it won't. History has proven that it won't. History has, like one of the coaches I worked with, they always used to say, water finds its level. It will find its level in this thing. It will allure them and people will do it. And then you'll eventually see rules kick into place or restrictions kick into place, or, something happen that makes them change. Like it'll balance the scales.
Last question for you. This is, in some cases, the wildest year in our industry in a long time. I was on a call with someone who we both know and love, and he said to me, I've been in solar for 15 years, and this is the first year I actually wish I wasn't in solar. I can't make a decision where it's not the wrong decision, and it's completely out of my control. And I was obviously referring to the first half of the year in particular. I don't know if any of us would have predicted 2 years ago that the ITC was going away. What are your thoughts for the next 6 to 18 months for solar, for our industry, whether it's opportunities, risks, where you see things going? What do you think is going to happen?
I mean, I will say he's not like 100% wrong. Like it is tough to plan. It is tough to plan because of so many changing variables. On the same cycle, I kind of like that. I like that challenge. Like I like whenever it's chaos. I like finding out ways to calm the chaos, to calm the storm. It's like, and you're in that big moment, like the bright lights are shining on you. Like I want to separate myself and figure out how to make it through. We're making it through because we're going to diversify a little bit. Home electrification to me is important. I want to understand that the bill is our enemy, common enemy. The utility bill is their common enemy. So what can I do to help that? Can I do HVAC? Can I do home energy monitoring? Can I do a better roof? Can I do all, and we're going to do all that. I'm going to do all that pretty soon here. So it's exciting. So I want to give more offerings within my scope. Like I'm not going out there and building kitchens. I'm not going out there and installing toilets. Like what really affects their utility bill? Well, most part it's HVAC. Okay, then what's my next step? That's sometimes a little cheaper. Well, home energy monitoring. Like where are you using all this? Where can I educate this customer on, hey, let's think about this. Let's see if I can fit a smaller system that's going to produce 80%, but like let's talk about how you can change your lifestyle. Like let's make it better. Let's make you more sustainable in what you do. That is where I see SunnyMac evolving, in the near future, really. I told Matt I was going to release it today, and I'm excited to say it, but it is that's, whether it be EVs, standalone roofs, home energy monitoring, HVAC, like I want to play a part in it because I want to defeat their utility bill. And I want to be able to give a good conversation with the customer and educate them on how they can be better and save money.
We're seeing that trend across a lot of organizations. I think in the next 5 years, there will not be solar companies unless it's like your really mom and pop solar installer that's a subbed out installation team. It will all be either home electrification or field services. And you'll figure out what menu of products you want to offer based on your market or your skill set or your appetite. Solar will go that way because it's all the same stuff. And honestly, I think if you've done solar, you've done the toughest of all of them. You can't take a roofer and make them a solar person or an HVAC. Solar can do any of them. And that's going to be where it goes.
Like when you think about it in the grand scheme of it, like it isn't an overly complicated system. Like in terms of its pieces, of its components, so I agree with you, but there is nuances that make it challenging. Like each day is different, each customer, each house, like each building code, each builder is different, so the fact that you're flexible, and then that's where, again, I'm expanding inside my, what I consider still a scope of work. That's comfortable to me.
I would actually push back a little bit and say it actually is complicated. Think about it. You're on a roof, so you can do roofing, right? You're fitting 20 or 30 pieces of glass power plants in a jigsaw together. versus just slapping shingles.
No,
Not
no,
to
I
diminish roofing, right? HVAC, right? You're doing conduit runs already. You're doing,
I think it's easy with components. Like it's not like there's 50, yes, I'm not counting like the little bits and bobs that go into, tying into from a tap box and so on and so forth. Like I'm not talking about that, but just it is the big three. Like it's panels, it's inverters, and it's racking. Like to me, that's where it's simple. The install can be challenging. You're not just pulling someone off, like you said. I've seen it. I've seen people try that. I've seen roofers go, I can do this, and I can install it. And it's like, you don't understand the technology out of it. Like, it's just going to fail.
Yep. Well, it's an exciting future. And honestly, if we can ballast the volatility of solar with a variety of other products and all defeat the utility together, we'll all be better for it. And so
usage isn't going to go down, man. And it ain't going to get cheaper.
It's only going up too.
That's
only
it.
Going up.
So, I'm obviously I'm in the industry, so I'm a firm believer of it. But we can do our part to help that burden that load a little bit.
Yep.
And we can do it quick. That's the difference.
Yep. Matt, thank you. There's no underscoring further how much this is a human experience, a services industry. It is about relationships and quality, and doing it the right way, and seeing it from the long-term perspective. And as you said, we're focused on getting energy to people at a lower price, and having it be abundant. So thank you for everything that you've shared with us and the honesty and setting an example for where our industry should go. Thanks for a lot.
Thanks, Jason, man. This was awesome.